Hello everyone. Today's poem is Jiangnan Chun by Du Mu. It's writing about the spring in the south of Yangtze River. In the ancient times, Jiangnan, or the south to the Yangtze River, normally refers to the Hunan province or Hubei province. And the area currently we think of as Jiangnan, the Zhejiang and Jiangsu province, is normally referred to as Jiangdong, the east of the Yangtze River. But you can see at the late Tang Dynasty, when Du Mu lives, he referred to this area, the Jiangdong area, as Jiangnan as well. So the concept changed over times, and today when the Chinese talking about Jiangnan, mostly the people will think is the province of Jiangsu, Anhui, Jiangxi, Zhejiang province at the downstream of the Yangtze River. While at the before Tang or at the early Tang period, this area was called as Jiangdong. To the contrast of today's Chinese knowledge, before Tang Dynasty, there's very few to none articles or poems describing the spring of this area, Jiangnan, the Yangtze River areas, because before Tang Dynasty, the economy and culture is more in the Yellow River area, and the population is more in the Yellow River areas. Though the Yangtze River area is much low developed, and for the Canton area, it's almost like the place for the savages. So that's a big contrast to today's situation in China. In today's time, the Canton area could be the most developed area, and then the Yangtze River, especially the downstream of the Yangtze River area, is very developed, and to the north, to the west, is sort of the developing areas. So when we're reading about the classic poems, we should know the common sense of the people in that times. And you can see this change from this poem, Jiangnan Chun, because the place already changed, the term is already changed, because Du Mu started to use the Jiangnan to refer to the downstream of Yangtze River. Before him, normally Jiangnan is not for this area, it's for the midstream of Yangtze River. Also, you can see the articles, see from the articles and poems that this area is well-developed area, especially in the mid and late Tang period, which is the time frame Du Mu lived. And the main side of today's Chinese, that the splendid springtime is in this area, I thought is because this poem and some other poems from the mid and late Tang period, they started to describe and praise the beauty, the wonderful springtime in this area. On the other hand, this poem was the very example for the spring of the Jiangnan area. So when you ever think about the spring in Jiangnan, this poem is one of the must that showed up in a typical Chinese mindset. In reality, the scenarios, the scenic views in this area during the springtime, it is the best place or the best springs within China. I was a northerner, born and grown up in the Yellow River area, or the ancient capital Chang'an City, today Xi'an City. So the springtime is a so-so time among the 4 seasons. And normally the autumn season was the best season to your knowledge, or as far as you can see. When I came to Nanjing, where this poem write about, to study in the universities, I spent 4 years in Nanjing, which city described in this poem. Only from that time I realized spring is the best seasons. The spirit is very high. I normally get up very late in the morning, but when I came to Nanjing, the Jiangnan area, I get up early in the springtime, totally fresh, with high spirits. And when you go out, it's so green and with so many flowers, mostly pink, red, everywhere, and also the green rivers, lakes along the road, even you are in the big cities. So that's the best seasons you can feel by yourself, by your own body. So when I finished my college, I went to Beijing, which is the other weather from the Yellow River, as well as from the Yangtze River areas. The springtime could be seen by most Beijing people as the worst season among the 4 seasons. Of course, the best season in Beijing is the autumn time. So in Beijing, the spring is windy and it's so dusty and so dry. And there's so many floating things in the area, somehow from the trees, and it's got you choke. It's hard to breathe, and the weather, the atmosphere is so bad. So most people in Beijing think the spring is not a good time. It's sleepy, the weather is so worse, the air is so dry and with so many dust. So when you had to work your ways to feel the difference of the different places. If I'm staying in Xi'an or in Beijing all the time, I can never feel the real spirits of this poem or of the spring of the Jiangnan area. Okay, let's have the poem first. I will read it in the Shanxi dialect, Qinqiang, because Dumu is a Shanxi people or Xi'an people, as me do, and I try to visit his residence not far from the Xi'an city, 10-15 kilometers south to the Xi'an city. Now it's in the huge mega cities of the Xi'an, but in the past it's south to the city, Duqu. I'm almost get to his tomb several kilometers away, but the time is so late, and if I want to go to visit his tomb, his tomb still there. I need to climb up the Yuan, so you still remember the term Yuan. His tomb was on the other side of one of the Shaolin Yuan. So I will leave it to my next visit. Okay, 秦腔闹，江南粉，斗母，千里莺啼绿映红，绯村山郭酒旗风。南朝480寺，多少楼台烟雨中。So the wording is very easily understand, and it's very well refined wording by Du Mu. He's famous for his wordings. Very simple, but actually very well and very carefully selected and refined. 千里莺啼绿映红. So here is a sound. The bird is singing among the 1,000 miles across the alongside the Yangtze River, and also there's colors 绿映红. So basically it's all green, so green, fresh green, but the red flowers is shadowing with green trees, green grasses with each other, shining with each other. 水村山郭酒旗风. 水村, so that's very typical because the main difference from the Yellow River and the Yangtze River is in the Yangtze River area, the river and the lakes and ponds is so many. So when you ever walk outside, there's always river, lakes, ponds in your eyesight. So 水村, that's when you saw this term, you always reminds you to think about the real image of the village in this area. 山郭, there's a lot of small mountains, small hills in this area, and this is quite different from the northern place, from Chang'an, because around Chang'an, roughly 30 kilometers away, that's huge mountains, 3,000, 4,000 above sea level. The mountains in this area normally several hundred meters high, 100 meters, 200 meters, but still small mountains and hills. So that makes you can see very clearly the things in the mountain. Even you are in the plain area, you can see there's a temple very clearly, and you can see the shape, you can see the colors, and there's a huge big trees on the top of the mountain, and you can also have your eyesight. It's quite different from the big mountains. The big mountains, when you look at, especially you see the whole mountains, you should look at from a far distance, and you don't see any details of the mountains, the trees, the colors. It's dark blue or it's a dark gray. The color is just looks, the whole mountain is dark gray or dark blue. But in this area, the mountains are small mountains, so you can see the fresh green of the mountain, and you can see the red colors of the flowers from a little distance from the mountains. So if you want to fully taste the poem, you should go to the place and try to see by your own eyes. 酒旗风. So that's one of the details. In the mountains or in the kilometers away villages, you see the bars. 酒旗is the flag, which normally has a character jiu on the flag, which is the signature for the bars, the Chinese bars. We call in the Chinese term, it's called 酒肆. You can dine in the bars, you can drink Chinese wines in the bars. So there's a lot of in the village or in some of the midways, there's always bars, and mostly you cannot see the house or the buildings, but definitely you will see the flag is sticking outside from the green trees. You can see that flag. You know there's a bar and have some wines. 南朝480寺，多少楼台烟雨中. So the first two sentences is sort of the poet. He's touring on the ground and what he saw and what he hear, and actually he's drinking in the bars. That's my wild guess. 酒旗风. When he saw that bar, he will get in it, has some wings. And the third and fourth sentences is thinking, is purely what he's thinking, and it's in his mind. 南朝480寺. So in the South dynasty, which roughly several hundred years before Dumu's time, that is a miserable time because China became split into several countries, and the kings changed so frequently that there's so many wars, and the political is so corrupted, and the people lead a poor life. So normally that's not a good time in a Chinese mind. But with that situation, the Buddhism became very popular because you lead a miserable life, so you put more of your energy and your time to the Buddhism or to the other religions. So that's very naturally. So in any of the bad times in the Chinese history, the religions became normally very, very popular. And also in Dumu's time, the Buddhism became very, very popular and very, very prosperous. And Dumu actually is against Buddhism. He has made proposal to the emperors to ban the Buddhism. So Dumu is always want to be a politician, and he want to make the change to the countries. His grandpa was a very famous premier minister, and he was so heavily influenced by his grandpa. So when most people read this poem, they think it's just describe the beautiful scenic views of the Yangtze River, of the Jiangnan area. But actually, from the third and fourth sentences, you will see the Dumu actually makes his thinkings, and he feels sorrows because his days, the political and the country is sort of like the South dynasty several hundred years ago. It's very, very weak. The political is so corrupted, so not doing good to the people. And so in the surface, there's so many Buddhist buildings, 480 temples. That's not an accurate number, but it refers to so many temples in one city, because he's referred the city of Nanjing, the capital city of South Dynasty, has 480 temples. That's a bunch of temples, too much. 多少楼台烟雨中 So there's how many 多少 How many is a sign? So many actually. The meaning is so many buildings. 楼台 is two type of Chinese buildings. 楼 is a high-rise buildings. 台 is just like a sort of the platform, but it's high-rise and there's no roofless. So normally people climb up to the platform to praise or to look far from. So there's how many temples with high-rise buildings with platforms is in the rains. 烟雨中 it describes the rain is so tiny and so fine. The raindrop is just like the smoke, or so it's or like the frog, like the frost. So 烟雨 is the describe the rain is very, very small rains like frog, like frost. That's very typical in the late springtime, because that's the experience, my own experience as a northerner as well. In the Yangtze River, there's a weather so-called as 梅雨天. It gets so humid that the floors will be getting wet just because of the humidity of the air. And also the rains, it rains for weeks, never stops. Normally it's not heavy rains, very small rains, but it's endless. And when I came to the Canton and Hong Kong, there's very similar weathers, but they have a different term which is called 回南天, which means in the winter's time it's north wind, blow from the north to the south, from the mainland to the ocean, South China Sea. But when the spring comes, the wind turns over, and the wind blows from the south to the north and bring the very humid atmospheres from the ocean to the land. So that makes the atmosphere, the air is so humid, and the rains, so many rains for weeks. So that's the very typical weathers in the Yangtze River and Canton, the Pearl River area. But in the Yellow River, we don't have such weathers, humid rains, small rains that never stops. So if as a northerner, I will never taste or feel so much with this point, but fortunately, I lived in the Yangtze River for 5 years, and I lived in the Canton for 3 years. I know all the details of weathers and what specifically the term is about. Otherwise, you just imagine the situation from your own place, from your own experience, from your hometown, the weather of your hometown, the scenarios of your hometown or the place you lived. So with Chinese said, if you want to be a good person, a knowledge person, 破万卷书，行万里路。破万卷书 is broke 10,000 books. So that which means you read it so carefully, so hard, you make the book broken. That means you read 10,000 books, and that's far not enough. The other half or the things you should do is to travel 10,000 miles. Okay, That's for today. So with this poem, the takeaway is it's not a simple poems describing the best season of the Jiangnan area, the Yangtze river areas. The best spring times is so beautiful and so fresh. It so make people so high spirited. Actually, it's the sign of the poet himself that he was in the old capital of South Dynasty, which is a bad, corrupted government and country, and he just feel the same of his current country or his current government, and he can do nothing. Actually, he was so heavily influenced by his grandpa, a very famous Prime Minister of the mid-Tang period. He wanted to make a change to the country. He wanted to make the country strong, the people lead a happy life. But with the situation, he can do nothing. So all the poems Du Mu write about, on the surface, it's sort of the drinkings and go to the whore house and play around 2 rounds. You can feel he's not so happy. Even the scenario, the atmosphere is so beautiful, so high, just like this poem. But that was the writing skills, to use the happy environment to make the contrast to his inner thinkings. He feels so terrible. He feels so bad. He can do nothing. That's hopeless. He's hopeless. So he put more energy to wine drinking to the whore's house. That's a bad time, and that's a bad time for Du Mu as well. Okay. Du Mu is one of my preferred, most favorite poet, and his writing is not about the things in front of him. So you can always feel the time, the vast, span of time in his writings. Also, his space, the big space, cross the countries or across the universe. The time and space is always makes article and poem big. Okay, bye-bye. That's for today.